addressing or capturing the validity of a measurement instrument is to focus on just one specific component of validity, that is the reliability of measurement instruments. That is the question whether repeated measurements produce the same result. That is, repeated measurements of the same phenomenon in the same unit with the same instrument, assuming that nothing has changed in the phenomenon in the time between the two measurements. So think of a scale. You try to capture the weight of a person, and you use the same scale. It's the same person, but in the meantime, that person has completed a sports and nutrition optimization program and weight loss surgery. So that person is, of course, not weighing as much as initially, so that doesn't speak against the reliability of the measurement instrument. So under the condition, we can't assume that something has changed in the meantime. Then we want this stability of measurement in the same unit with the same instrument. There are different aspects of, and this alone, however, doesn't guarantee that the measurement is valid. You can have a scale that produces always the same result in the same unit, but nevertheless doesn't capture the weight of the person that is being measured, right? So it's no guarantee, it's just a precondition for validity. And there's three different aspects of reliability. First, in reliability, who measures something should be unimportant. So your coders, interviewers, observers, research managers should basically be expendable. You could exchange them for someone else and they should arrive at the same results. Measurements should still be repeatable even if the personnel changes. Of course, the personnel needs the same training or the same conditions for being selected. But if that is the case, then it should be repeatable even if the persons are no longer in part of the project. It should also be unimportant who or what is being measured. Measurements should still be repeatable independent of whether you measure the weight of person A or person B, of a young or an old person, of a high weight or low weight person, right? The scale should always work. Or if it doesn't, we should know the limitations and maybe have an alternative measurement instrument for those where reliability isn't there. And the context in which it's being measured should be unimportant unless it changes something about the reality that we measure. A few examples, one example. Let's try to measure the political left bias in a Norwegian newspaper, in the Norwegian newspaper coverage about the Progress Party, right? And our measurement instrument is a content analysis category that asks coders to rate to what degree the article is unfair towards the Progress Party of Norway. And the study context would be the content analysis was run in a campaign context where volunteers associated with the Progress Party conducted the content analysis. The same articles are analyzed by volunteers associated with the Red Party, and both analyses are again repeated 1 year later when no campaigns are being run. What would you expect the reliability to be here? And again, use the points 1, 2, and 3 from above, whether those three aspects of reliability figure prominently here. But the nice thing about reliability is that it can be quite easily expressed in numbers. You can give it a real score that says how reliable is the measurement. And there is three prominent ways of testing reliability. One is test-retest reliability, very much in line with the idea of repeating the measurement and getting the same results. You measure the same thing at two different points in time and compare the results. That what's being measured could in principle change over time, so that's a little complication. And the measurement itself could introduce change or induce change. For instance, if you have a knowledge test twice, the respondent may learn something from the first round and then react to it, learn, and then perform better at the next time. But if those two things can be minimized or excluded, then this is quite a good way of reliability testing. The other option is to use internal consistency reliability. That is, you measure a construct not just with one measurement instrument, but with several slightly different measurement instruments, for instance, different question items in a questionnaire. You don't only ask people whether they like horses, but you ask them about many different kinds of horses and see if the results converge, like people who like horse type number 1, horse type number 2, and so on, all the same. Those are probably people who are very favorable towards horses. Right? So that would be internal consistency of this measurement. Do the different similar items, questions, tests converge and produce highly correlated results? And this can be analyzed using internal consistency analysis that you've probably heard of Cronbach's alpha as a measure of internal consistency. Others prefer omega hierarchical as an alternative, but they are quite similar based on their logic. So basically it is a derivative of the correlation matrix between all the items, and if the correlations tend to be high, then you get a high alpha or also omega hierarchical score, or by means of exploratory factor analysis or confirmatory factor analysis. And these different results for the different items can then be used if they prove internally consistent, for instance, or show as a common factor. They can be used to create an index or a general factor that represents the common core of the measurements, or the different factors that emerge are each then assigned a factor score that represents the 2, 3, 4 factors that are represented by the set of items that you tested. Good. And the final mode of reliability testing is popular in content analysis and in quantitative observations. That is agreement between different persons. So that emphasizes this first, who measures something should be unimportant. You let 2 or more different coders, raters, or observers rate the same content or the same situation they observe. And then you compare their results using quite specialized agreement metrics. So you can't use the regular correlation coefficients that would cause problems. You want the scores to be the same and not only to be correlated. So we use agreement scores, and we can even use agreement between humans and computers. For instance, to check whether a computer rates a certain text similar to a human. If we have a binary classification, yes or no observations, then we can use simple agreement in terms of percentages of agreements between codes, but also sensitivity, specificity, precision, accuracy, false positive rate, false negative rate, or F1 scores. So these all take into account that one measurement would be viewed as the gold standard to compare against the truth, basically, and the other would be there to replicate that, and then you can distinguish different kinds of agreement and express that in specialized scores. I'll cover that in the lecture on content analysis in some detail. Just like the other measures for other kinds of classifications where we have specialized scores such as Cohen's kappa, Brennan-Prediger's kappa, or Krippendorff's alpha. So this is probably the most popular one, but this one is also useful in several contexts. So before we proceed with other kinds of validity expression or testing, let's look at the common roots of reliability problems. Again, it's very often about the instructions that researchers come up with, instructions to coders, interviewers, and observers, but also to interviewees, if they are vague, ambiguous, unclear, or confusing. And also response categories that overlap or multi-dimensional instructions that you should basically rate two different things, but on a single scale that is usually doomed to fail and cause confusion, or it is handled very differently by different observers, for instance. But roots of reliability problems might also be that respondents are not really capable of recognizing or expressing their own inner states. So if it's unconscious things and it's hard to express or become aware of, then your responses might be just random. So that is a problem. And overburdening coders, interviewers, observers, or interviewees with tons of questions, tons of categories, etc., which they need to consider, is also a common root of reliability problems.